Hey everybody, my name's Ed. Okay, so we're going to do another random comics walkthrough. This time we've got Manhunter number 4 from 1988. Uh, Biff Bam Pow. DC Comics aren't just for kids anymore. Okay, so this one's written by John Ostrander and Kim Yale. Penciling is by Doug Rice, and the inking is by Kelley Jones. Now, Manhunter is one of these interesting concepts, or it's not that it's an interesting concept, but it's interesting that it's one of these properties, or I'll say trademarks, that DC Comics has something like whatever, three, four, five different concepts connected to it that don't really connect to each other, but they keep coming up with new ideas for because they want to hold on to the name. So you've got like Manhunter, you've got Starman, you've got Sandman. Uh, all these things, they all go back to like the 40s or whatever, but every so often they'll come up with a new idea, a new concept, or revamp the old concept, or whatever, because they just don't want to let go of the trademark. I know there's been like at least, I don't know, four or five different Manhunters. I know there's the Golden Age Manhunter. Then there's the 70s. There was a Manhunter by Walt Simonson. I think the Golden Age Manhunter had something to do with Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. 70s Manhunter, Walt Simonson. Then the 80s, you had the Manhunters who were created by the Guardians of Oa, and they were kind of these space cop robots flying throughout the universe or whatever. And I think right after that, that's when you get to this concept. So this was a guy who was part of a human cult of manhunters that was somehow uh, inspired by the robot manhunters. I'm not exactly sure of that, but I think this guy was somebody from the human cult of manhunters, and he kind of struck out on his own, become like a mercenary or whatever. And then I think the modern day manhunter is a woman. I think she's like a disaffected DA or lawyer or something like that, and she decides to become a vigilante. And she takes on the manhunter name or whatever. So anyway, we're gonna get into this. The unmasking, okay? Through the mask. All right. Okay. So I guess in the previous issue, this manhunter was attacked by a guy named Damas, who's this sort of mercenary assassin guy. He was hired by this art collector to, steal his mask. Because we're going to get into it here. But our guy goes to confront the art collector, and he's like, "Oh, you're so and so. I expected you to be much older." And she's like, "Well, I am much older. I was born a long time ago, but I've got lots of money. I was able to afford all kinds of surgeries and enhancements, so that's why I look like this." Okay. And he's like, "All right, fine, whatever." And she talks about how she's fascinated by masks. And in a mask, you can be anyone, you can be anything, you can be a demigod if you want to, a demigod. And basically he says, look, whatever, you can have the mask, but I need you to call off Dumas. I don't want him going anywhere near my family. And she's like, oh no, once Dumas takes a job, he doesn't quit. You can't stop him until either he's dead or you're dead. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever will be. She's like, hey, why don't you put on that mask? I want to see what you look like. And then our guy's like, oh my god, you know now I know your secret, because his mask has all kinds of gadgets and gizmos in there, and he can hear this, and he can see in infrared and ultraviolet, and hear your heartbeat and all this sort of thing. So, comes back later in his manhunter gear, and he's like, goes there to confront art dealer lady. He's like, all right, you know what? I've got the upper hand. I know your secret. You're gonna back off, or else I'm going to tell everyone that, in fact, you are Damas. All right. And she's like, well, yeah, you're right. I was born around the turn of the century, blah, blah, blah. These enhancements aren't just, plastic surgery. I have shape shifting powers or whatever. And that's that. We're just going to have to, like, fight it out now. All right? So, they face off. They have a fight. Okay. All right. More fighting. Biff bam pow. You take that. Knocking all your mask all over the place. And finally, set the peacemaker's mask. Throw it at the Moss, throw him off balance, and then he zaps the Moss with his cane, knocks him into the concrete and breaks his back and pretty much kills him. I will remove Damas's mask. And here's the last symbolic gesture. I'll leave my mask here. Because, ooh, the symbolism. Alright? Okay. What I think is interesting here is... Letters page. This is an ad for subscriptions. But what's really interesting here is how Dumas is somebody who is biologically born male, but has chosen to present themselves as female. Alright? And let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. I was born around the turn of the century. My condition is extended not through the years, not only to my face, but my entire body, as well as giving me vitality that belies my years. I could mold my body into whatever form was pleasing to me or others. It was foolish to expect I would ever find a woman who would love me. And we all need love. So I created my own, a woman with my own heart's yearning. She became the object of many men's yearnings, for she is the embodiment of the masculine concept of all that is feminine. Alright? So these days, we would probably consider this person trans. And like I said, it's really interesting. They kind of had to imply and tiptoe around it, because even though Biff Bam Bow comics aren't for kids anymore, aren't just for kids anymore, it's still a gold comic from the 80s. And they still couldn't be as explicit and frank about sort of things pertaining to gender and sexuality and LGBT issues and things like that. This is actually right around the time. This is 88. We'll say it's around that time period where over at Marvel Comics, Bill Mantlo was writing Alpha Flight, and he wanted to do a story where North Star, the superhero North Star, was going to come out as gay, and he wanted to do a whole thing with AIDS or whatever. But the editor-in-chief there, Jim Shooter, vetoed the story at the last moment, and Bill had to come up with a different explanation for all the things that he was kind of building up towards there. And that's an interesting story in and of itself, but also sort of connecting to this issue with the, if you want to call it transgender issues. Bill Mantlo also did a storyline in Alpha Flight where they had a hero, his name was Walter is it Lankowski? I can't remember the civilian name, but it was a superhero called Sasquatch, and his mind was in a Sasquatch body, then his mind was in a robot body, and then his mind finds another Sasquatch body, but when he tried to turn that Sasquatch body back into human, he was stuck in a female body. So I'm not so sure. I don't remember reading the whole thing of that storyline, so I'm not so sure that they really dealt with the gender issues in sort of, really dealt with it in sexual ways, or not. That's not what I want to say. If they really dealt with sexuality and gender too explicitly, I think they just played it off as kind of a more wacky body swap thing. uh, if you remember the 80s, there were all these movies where, the husband switches bodies with the wife, and the adult switches bodies with the kids, and Freaky Friday and all that sort of thing. But yeah, on the page, Walter has a woman's body, and he's in love with another woman who was Aurora, if I remember correctly. So, that's something interesting that was going to happening. And it's interesting that, at that time, like I said, they were trying to introduce these kind of LGBT issues, but they kind of also had to kind of tiptoe around it. Um, I'm thinking about in the Superman comics with John Byrne again, he introduced Maggie Sawyer, but again, at that time, you had to kind of imply it or whatever. So it's pretty interesting that at that time, like I said, they were trying to do these kind of gay coded characters. Uh, and I guess this is an example of it. It'd be interesting to see how they did this story now that, like I said, you could be really upfront and frank about such matters. So, but anyway, that's it. Manhunter number 4, 1988. Thank you very much for listening. You guys have a good day.